Natasha, and I am happy to have you here today. If you are new to this channel, we upload daily episodes to help you improve your English listening and speaking skills. Every day, you can practice real conversations, learn new vocabulary, and understand how English is used in daily life. This episode is designed for B1, B2 level learners who want to become more confident and fluent in English. Today, let me share a story about an experience I had last week that taught me an important lesson. I was on my way to a local market to buy some fresh vegetables for dinner. It was a busy afternoon, and people were moving in all directions. While waiting at the counter, I noticed an elderly man named Daniel struggling to carry a heavy bag of rice. Without thinking much, I stepped forward and offered to help him. He smiled warmly and said, "Thank you, young lady. I did not expect someone to stop and help me today." We started walking together toward his car. As we walked, Daniel shared a little about his life. He told me he had been married for over 40 years, and his wife loved cooking traditional meals at home. They often invited their neighbors over for dinner because they believed sharing food was a way to build strong relationships. Listening to his story made me think about how small acts of kindness can create meaningful connections between people. After helping him load the bag into his car, he offered me a simple piece of advice. He said, "Always take time to notice the people around you. Everyone carries something heavy, even if you cannot see it." That sentence stayed in my mind. It reminded me that communication is not just about speaking. It is about noticing, listening, and caring for others. Now, let me ask you a question. Have you ever helped someone without expecting anything in return? How did it make you feel? Think about a time when a stranger smiled at you or said something kind. Did it change your day in any way? These small moments often have a bigger impact than we realize. Later that evening, I shared the story with my neighbor Emma. She told me about a similar experience she had at a bus stop. One rainy morning, she saw a young mother carrying an umbrella and holding her little boy's hand while struggling with grocery bags. Emma offered to hold the umbrella for her so she could manage the bags more easily. The mother thanked her and said it was rare to meet people who still cared about such small things. Stories like these remind us that kindness does not require wealth or power. It only requires attention and a willing heart. In English, there is a phrase, "A little help goes a long way." It means even a small action can have a big effect. When we practice English, we often focus only on words and grammar. But fluency is also about expressing emotions and creating connections, just like in these stories. Try using phrases like, "Can I help you with that?" Or, "Would you like some assistance?" They are polite, natural, and show that you care. As you listen to this episode, repeat some of these sentences out loud. Imagine yourself in these situations, helping an elderly man, supporting a neighbor, or assisting a parent at the bus stop. Practice saying, "Can I give you a hand?" or "Let me help you with this." These are real-life sentences that native speakers use every day. Tomorrow, when you go outside, look for a chance to use one of these phrases. Maybe you are at a shop and someone drops a bag. Maybe you see someone trying to open a door while carrying something heavy. A simple sentence in English can start a real conversation and also improve your confidence. The next day, something similar happened to me, and it gave me another chance to practice what I just shared with you. I went to a bakery early in the morning to buy fresh bread. The bakery was quite crowded, and everyone seemed to be in a hurry. While waiting in line, I noticed a woman named Sarah who was trying to pay for her bread while holding her toddler and balancing a small bag in her other hand. I smiled and said, "Would you like me to hold the bag for you?" She looked at me with relief and replied, "Oh yes, thank you so much." It was such a small thing, but it made her morning easier. After that, we started talking while waiting for our turn. She told me that she and her husband recently moved to the city because of his new job. They were still adjusting to the busy lifestyle, and finding friendly people in the neighborhood gave them comfort. She said, "Sometimes a kind word from a stranger makes the whole day feel lighter." I realized how powerful a simple gesture and a few words can be in building trust and friendliness, even between people who meet for the first time. This is what I want you to notice when you practice English in real life. You do not need long, complicated sentences. Short, kind phrases are often the most effective. For example, you can say, "Do you need any help?" or "I can carry this for you if you like." These are polite, natural, and easy to remember. Later. That afternoon, I visited my friend Daniel, the same man I met at the market. His wife, Helen, invited me for tea, and we sat in their garden. Helen shared a story about her early days of marriage. She and Daniel moved into their first home many years ago, and their neighbors helped them set up everything. One neighbor even brought them homemade soup on their first evening because they were too tired to cook. Helen said, "That simple act made us feel at home." Hearing these stories from different people reminded me how kindness travels from one person to another like a chain. When someone does something good for you, you often feel like doing something good for someone else. It spreads naturally. I want you to think about how this connects to learning English. Language is not only about vocabulary and grammar. It is a bridge between people. The more you use it in real situations, the more confident you become. When you ask someone, "Can I help you?" or "Is everything okay?" you are not only speaking English, you are creating a positive moment. One more story I want to share is about my neighbor James. He is a father of 2 children, and he often helps people in our community without expecting anything in return. Last week, he saw an elderly woman waiting at the bus stop with heavy grocery bags. The weather was very hot, and she looked tired. James offered to carry her bags to her apartment because it was just across the street. At first, the woman was surprised, but then said, "Thank you. People like you make this city feel like a real home." These examples are not extraordinary, but they show how real conversations start. A few kind words can open the door to stories, friendships, and even better English practice. Now, think about one simple phrase you can use today. Will it be, "Do you want me to hold this?" Or, "Can I give you a hand?" Choose one and repeat it a few times. Say it clearly, with a smile in your voice. This is how you build natural fluency. Yesterday evening, I had a very interesting experience at the community center near my home. Every Wednesday, there is a small gathering where people come to share ideas about how to make the neighborhood better. I decided to attend because I believe real conversations in English happen most naturally in these kinds of places. When I arrived, I saw a man named Robert setting up chairs for the meeting. He was carefully arranging them in rows, but he looked like he needed one more pair of hands. I walked over and said, "Would you like some help with that?" His face brightened immediately, and he said, "That would be wonderful, thank you." We moved the chairs together, and while doing that, we started talking about the importance of community events. Robert told me that he has lived in this neighborhood for more than 20 years with his wife, Linda. They raised their 2 children here and believe that strong neighborhoods start with people knowing each other. He said, "Many people stay inside their homes and do not talk to their neighbors anymore. But when we organize small events like this, we get a chance to connect again." That simple conversation while arranging chairs turned into a meaningful exchange about family life, memories, and the value of communication. When the meeting started, people began sharing their suggestions. One woman named Clara talked about creating a weekend garden club where families could come together to plant flowers and vegetables. Another man, Stephen, suggested setting up a reading corner for children so parents could bring their kids and spend quality time there. While listening, I realized that all of these ideas were not just about activities. They were about building a sense of togetherness. And what is interesting is that during these moments, people use simple English expressions again and again. That sounds like a good idea. I can help with that. When can we start? These are the kinds of real phrases that help you sound more natural when you speak. After the meeting, Clara approached me and said, "I noticed you were helping Robert earlier. That was very kind of you." I smiled and replied, "It was no trouble at all. Helping each other is how communities grow." We talked about how small acts, even like moving chairs or carrying a box, can create space for friendship. She mentioned that her husband often repairs old bicycles for children in the neighborhood because not every family can buy a new one. That story made me think about how kindness is not always big or expensive. Sometimes it is about using what you already have to make someone else's life a little easier. On my way home, I stopped at the small grocery shop at the corner. The shopkeeper, Mr. Thomas, was helping a young man named Peter, who had just moved into the area with his wife. Peter was asking about the best time to buy fresh produce because he wanted to start cooking more meals at home. I joined the conversation and shared that early mornings usually have the freshest stock because deliveries come in before the shop opens. Peter thanked me and said, "It is so nice to meet people who share useful tips. It makes settling into a new place much easier." We ended up talking for a few more minutes about favorite easy-to-cook dishes and simple ingredients to keep at home. This reminded me of another important point for language learners. When you meet someone new, you do not need to prepare a long speech. Start with 1 or 2 helpful sentences. Ask something like, "Are you new here?" Or, "Would you like to know where to find the best bakery?" These short questions often lead to longer conversations because people appreciate genuine interest. The next morning, I had to take the bus to visit a friend across town. On the bus, an older gentleman named Mr. Harris sat beside me. He had a newspaper in his hand and a thoughtful look on his face. After a few minutes, he asked, "Do you know if this bus stops near the library?" I answered, "Yes, it does. I am getting off 2 stops after that. I can let you know when we get close." His eyes softened and he said, "That would be very helpful." During the ride, we started talking about reading habits. He said his wife enjoys borrowing cookbooks from the library because she likes trying new recipes every week. I told him that I also enjoy reading, and we exchanged ideas about simple ways to keep reading part of daily life, even when people are busy. When I got off the bus, I realized that simple travel situations often give you the best practice for English. You do not need to wait for a classroom or a formal lesson. You can practice with people around you, on a bus, in a shop, at a market, or at a meeting. Each time you do, your confidence grows little by little. Later that day, I went for a walk in the park near the river. There I met a couple, Anna and her husband David, sitting on a bench with a picnic basket. They had just finished their lunch and were enjoying the sunshine. I asked them, "Do you come here often?" Anna replied, "Yes, almost every weekend. It is our small way of spending quality time together after a busy week." We started a pleasant conversation about simple outdoor activities that help families relax. David mentioned that they sometimes bring extra sandwiches to share with anyone who might pass by, especially elderly people who walk alone. He said, "A small snack and a few minutes of friendly talk can make someone's afternoon better." These real-life stories all have something in common. They show that natural English often grows from polite offers, kind questions, and little acts of help. You can practice these patterns daily. For example, if you see someone looking for a place, you can say, "Can I show you the way?" If someone is carrying too many things, you can ask, "Shall I hold that for you?" These are not only correct sentences, but also powerful tools to build a positive moment. The next weekend, I visited a local library to return some books. There I met a young couple, Michael and his wife Laura, who were signing up for their first library card. They asked me how often people usually borrow books and if there were any quiet corners for reading. I gave them a little tour of the library, pointing out the study area, the children's reading section, and the small cafe in the corner. Michael said, "This place feels so welcoming. We moved here 2 months ago, and finding spots like this makes us feel more connected." Laura added, "It is not just about books. It is about having a place where people share time." As I left the library, I thought again about the importance of everyday conversations. Many learners think they need to wait for a big event to practice English, but the truth is, these opportunities appear all around us. They are hidden in small actions, helping someone carry something, giving directions, sharing a small tip, or even asking a simple question at a shop. On Sunday afternoon, I joined a small community cleanup near the park. Families, couples, and even some teenagers were there with gloves and trash bags. A man named Samuel came with his wife and 2 children. They told me they like joining these events because it teaches their kids about responsibility. While collecting trash along the walking path, Samuel asked me, "How long have you been part of this community?" I replied, "Almost 5 years now. Events like this make it feel like home." We exchanged a few more lines about how keeping the environment clean also helps people feel proud of their neighborhood. What I noticed was that during this whole event, people used simple and warm English phrases. They said things like, "Could you pass me that bag?" or "Thank you for picking that up." Nobody was trying to speak perfectly. They were just communicating naturally. This is what you should aim for. Not perfect grammar every time, but real connection. As the sun began to set, the group shared some water and small snacks under the trees. One older lady named Mrs. Brown told us how many years ago her husband used to organize similar activities before it became a regular event. She said, "He believed that keeping a place clean is just like keeping relationships healthy. You need small, regular care." I found her words very wise. They remind us that language learning is also about small, regular practice, not big, once-a-year efforts. On my way home from that event, I stopped at a nearby bakery again, and the shop assistant, Emily, recognized me from earlier in the week. She said, "It is nice to see you again. Did you enjoy the bread last time? We laughed and chatted for a few minutes. She told me her husband works at a farm that supplies fresh eggs to the shop. That simple exchange made me feel even more connected to the community because now I knew a bit more about where my food comes from. Do you see how all these moments are connected by a simple thread? A polite question, a kind offer, or even a short reply can start a chain of positive interaction. The more you use English in these everyday ways, the more natural it becomes. Last Monday morning, I visited a small hardware store to buy some light bulbs and a few simple tools for my kitchen. The store was quiet, and an older man named Mr. Carter was arranging items on the shelves. I asked him, "Excuse me, could you help me find the right size for this lamp?" He smiled and said, "Of course, let me see what you have." While he was looking through the shelves, we started a conversation about how people often buy the wrong size bulbs and have to return them. He shared that he and his wife have been running this store for more than 30 years, and they always enjoy helping new customers find what they need. This made me think about how small shops often create stronger personal connections than big supermarkets. After choosing the bulbs, I noticed a young couple, Andrew and his wife Sophia, looking at different types of garden tools. Andrew asked me if I had any experience with planting small flowers because they wanted to decorate their front yard. I told them that I once planted roses with my neighbor, and they grew beautifully in the first year. Sophia said, "That sounds lovely. We want to make our entrance more colorful, but we are not sure how to start." I suggested they begin with low-maintenance flowers like marigolds or daisies, which do not need too much care. They thanked me for the advice, and we all left the store feeling like we had learned something useful from each other. Later that day, I went to the community health center for a quick checkup. The nurse, Mrs. Allen, greeted me warmly and asked how my week had been. While waiting, I spoke with another visitor, Mark, who was there with his wife. They were discussing how important it is to schedule regular health checkups even when life feels busy. Mark said, "We often delay small health matters until they become bigger problems. But if we make time for them, it is easier to stay healthy." This small conversation reminded me that many useful exchanges in English happen in places we do not usually expect: waiting rooms, bus stops, or even while shopping. The next morning, I met my neighbor Rachel on the stairway. She was holding a basket of freshly baked bread. I said, "That smells amazing. Did you bake it yourself?" She laughed and said, "Yes, my husband helped me this time. We try to bake together on weekends because it is a nice way to spend time." We ended up talking about simple recipes that anyone can try at home. She gave me a tip. If you want soft bread, always let the dough rest longer than the recipe says. It was such a friendly moment that came from a simple greeting. Later in the week, I had to visit the post office to send a small parcel to my cousin. There was a short queue, and a man named Ethan was in front of me, looking a bit confused with the forms. I asked him, "Would you like me to show you how to fill that out?" He replied, "Yes, please. This is my first time sending a package here." We went through the form together, and he thanked me for making it less stressful. He told me he had just moved to this area with his wife because of her new teaching job. He said, "When people take a few minutes to guide you, it makes a new place feel like home much faster." On Thursday afternoon, I joined a small group at the local park for a clean water awareness event. There were families, office workers, and even a retired couple named Mr. and Mrs. Green, who had been living near the park for over 45 years. They shared stories about how the river used to be cleaner when they were young, and how everyone would swim in it during summer. Mr. Green said, "Now we cannot swim here, but we can still take care of it for the next generation." It was inspiring to hear how they still care so deeply about the place they live in. While we were collecting empty bottles along the path, a teenager named Daniel asked me about learning English. He said his father wanted him to practice more, outside of school, but he felt shy speaking with strangers. I told him, "Start with simple questions. If you see someone doing something interesting, ask them about it. You will be surprised how often people are happy to explain." He smiled and said, "Maybe I will try that next time." It reminded me that confidence comes step by step, not all at once. That evening, I had dinner with a family friend named Olivia. She and her husband run a small home-based catering service. Over the meal, we talked about how they started their business during a difficult time and how small conversations with neighbors helped them get their first clients. Olivia said, "People remember kindness and honesty. We never promised too much. We just told them what we could do and did our best." This conversation taught me that even in business, everyday English matters. Phrases like, "Would you like to try this?" or "Can I prepare something special for you?" can make a big difference. On Friday, I went for a morning walk and saw an older man trying to start his car. He looked frustrated because the engine would not start. I asked, "Do you need any assistance?" He said, "Yes, could you help me push it a little so I can check the battery?" We managed to move the car to a safer spot. He introduced himself as Mr. Lewis and said his wife was at home waiting for him to bring some groceries. We laughed about how cars sometimes stop working at the most inconvenient moments. He thanked me and said, "Little help like this makes the day better." That same day, I met my friend Clara at a local tea shop. She had just finished visiting her in-laws and wanted to share a story. Her husband's parents live in a small village, and every time they visit, the neighbors bring them fresh fruits from their gardens. Clara said, "It is amazing how people in villages still practice this kind of generosity. They do not expect anything back. They just share what they have." I told her that this is also a great way to practice language because it creates opportunities to say thank you, ask where the fruits came from, or talk about recipes. Saturday morning was sunny, and I decided to visit the weekly farmers market. There were many small stalls with vegetables, homemade bread, honey, and even handmade soap. I stopped at a stand where a man named Jacob was selling fresh honey. He said his wife takes care of the bees while he manages the selling. I asked, "Do you both enjoy working with bees?" He smiled. "Yes, it is peaceful and rewarding. Plus, we meet many kind people here." We talked about how honey is harvested and how they package it for the market. These conversations always remind me that learning English is not about big, complex sentences. It is about asking small questions that show real interest. Later, I went to a public library again to join a free weekend workshop on storytelling. The instructor, Mrs. Parker, asked everyone to share a memory from their childhood. I told them about how my neighbor used to bring me and my sister fresh bread every Sunday. Another participant, Liam, shared a story about how his father taught him to ride a bicycle and how they fell many times but laughed together. These simple, honest memories created a warm atmosphere in the room, and people began using English freely without worrying too much about mistakes. On Sunday afternoon, I received a call from my friend Henry. He wanted help moving a few boxes from his garage to his living room because he and his wife were reorganizing their home. I went over, and while carrying the boxes, we talked about how keeping things organized makes life less stressful. Henry said, "Sometimes we keep things we do not even use, but when we give them away to someone who needs them, we feel lighter." That sentence stayed with me because it also applies to language learning. If you share what you know, you remember it better. In the evening, I went for a walk by the lake. A woman named Karen was sitting on a bench with her sketchbook, drawing the sunset. I said, "That looks beautiful. Do you draw often?" She replied, "Yes. My husband and I both enjoy sketching in the evenings. It helps us relax after a busy day." We talked for a few minutes about how hobbies can bring couples closer and how sharing them with neighbors can also start new friendships. On Monday afternoon, I had to visit a small stationery shop near the train station to buy a few envelopes and notebooks. The shopkeeper, Mrs. Turner, was arranging new items on the shelves when I asked, "Could you help me find a strong envelope? For documents?" She smiled and said, "Certainly. This section here has the ones most people use for official papers." While she wrapped my purchase, we talked about how many students come to her shop during the school season. She mentioned that her husband sometimes helps her during busy hours, especially when many customers arrive at once. This reminded me that many small family businesses are built on teamwork and kindness. After leaving the shop, I walked toward the train platform and saw a man named Oliver struggling with a large suitcase. He was trying to lift it onto the bench. I said, "Let me help you with that. It looks heavy." He thanked me and explained that he and his wife had just returned from visiting their daughter in another city. He said, "Traveling is enjoyable, but carrying things can be a challenge as we get older." We exchanged a few travel tips, and he mentioned how much they appreciated people who offered simple help during their journey. Later in the evening, I attended a small workshop on time management at a local community hall. The speaker, Mr. Williams, shared how he and his wife plan their weekly activities to avoid unnecessary stress. He said, "We write down small tasks and do them together when possible. It keeps our home organized and gives us more time to spend with our children." During the discussion, participants shared examples of how they manage their schedules. One woman, Amanda, said she prepares meals for the whole week on Sundays with her husband so that they can have more free evenings. Listening to these stories, I realized how conversations about daily routines often include practical phrases like, "We try to plan ahead," or "It helps us save time." The next morning, I visited a local park where a group of volunteers was painting benches. A young man named Chris handed me a brush and said, "Would you like to join us for a while?" I agreed, and as we painted, we started talking about how small actions improve public spaces. Chris shared that his parents always encouraged him to take part in community work because it builds a sense of responsibility. He said, "When people see a clean and bright park, they feel proud of their neighborhood." In the afternoon, I went to a bakery to buy some bread. A woman named Julia was in front of me with two children. One of them accidentally dropped a small bag of rolls. I quickly picked it up and said, "Here you go, no problem." Julia smiled and said, "Thank you. It is not easy to manage everything when the children are excited." We exchanged a few words about how busy afternoons can be for parents. She mentioned that her husband often picks up the children when she is at work, so that they can have dinner together as a family. On Wednesday, I had to visit a nearby office to sign a few documents. While waiting in the reception area, a man named Patrick sat beside me and asked if I knew where the main hall was. I showed him the way, and we started a small conversation. He told me that he had recently started working there and was still learning about the different departments. He said, "Everyone has been very supportive, which makes a big difference when you start a new job." We talked about how small gestures like giving directions or sharing simple advice can make someone feel welcome at their workplace. In the evening, I met my friend Emily at a local cafe. She had been busy planning a small charity event with her husband, and they wanted to raise funds to buy books for a nearby school. She said, "Sometimes people think they need a big budget to help, but even a few useful items can make a difference." We discussed how to approach local businesses to donate small amounts or provide services for free. Emily mentioned that polite, clear communication often helps when asking for support. Phrases like, "Would you like to participate?" or "Can we count on your help?" are both respectful and encouraging. The next day, I went for a morning jog and saw a couple planting flowers near their house. I greeted them and said, "The garden looks wonderful." The husband, named Brian, replied, "Thank you. We enjoy working together on weekends. It gives us fresh air and makes the street more beautiful." His wife added that they sometimes give extra plants to neighbors so they can also decorate their windows. This small conversation turned into a 10-minute discussion about simple gardening techniques. I learned that certain plants grow well even in small pots, which is useful for people who do not have large spaces. In the afternoon, I visited a friend who had recently become a father. His name is Thomas, and he told me about the new routines he and his wife were building at home with their baby. He said, "We take turns during the night so both of us can rest a little. It is not easy, but it works." This conversation showed how teamwork and communication help in family life. It also reminded me that many real-life conversations include phrases like, "We share the work," or "We help each other." On Friday, I went to a local farmers cooperative to buy fresh vegetables. There, I met a woman named Hannah who was packing carrots into a box. She explained that she and her husband started this cooperative with a few neighbors so that everyone could buy healthy food at a fair price. She said, "It is not just about selling vegetables. It is about creating a network of trust." We talked about how people exchange recipes and ideas when they come to pick up their weekly supplies. Saturday afternoon, I joined a free workshop on basic home repairs at a community center. The instructor, Mr. Brown, demonstrated how to fix small leaks and how to check simple wiring problems safely. He mentioned that he often teaches these skills with his wife because they believe more people should know how to take care of their homes without always calling for expensive services. After the session, I thanked him and said, "These tips will be very useful." He smiled and said, "Share them with your neighbors. That is how knowledge spreads." Later that evening, I visited a park again and saw a small group of parents teaching their children how to ride bicycles. One father, Kevin, said to his daughter, "Keep your balance and look forward." Another mother, Lisa, encouraged her son by saying, "You are doing great. Just a little more." These small phrases are full of care and support. They show that language is often used not to impress, but to guide and encourage. Sunday morning, I helped a friend named Rachel move a few boxes to her new apartment. While carrying things, we talked about how changing homes can be stressful, but also exciting because it gives people a chance to meet new neighbors. Rachel said, "I hope to invite the families from this floor for tea next week. It is a good way to start friendly connections." This made me think of how a simple invitation like, "Would you like to join us for tea?" can open the door to many conversations. In the afternoon, I stopped by a local repair shop where a man named Jack was fixing a bicycle. He told me that he and his wife often help children in the area by repairing their bikes at a low cost or sometimes for free. He said, it keeps them active and safe. We talked for a while about how such simple services build trust in the community. Phrases like, let me check that for you, or I can fix it quickly, often create positive impressions. As the week ended, I looked back at all these moments. Helping in a shop, guiding a stranger, painting a bench, sharing recipes, and supporting small businesses. None of these conversations were planned, but each one became an opportunity to use English naturally. Every short question, every polite offer, every kind reply helped build a connection. There is a man named Victor who works as an architect. He is married to Emma, and they have one young child. Victor used to work long hours in the office, often staying late at night to finish projects. He wanted to provide for his family, but he started to notice that his health was suffering, and he had little time to spend with his wife and child. One evening, his wife Emma said, "Victor, I know you work hard, but we also need you at home. We miss having dinner together." Victor realized that success is not only about money or career achievements, it is also about creating time for your loved ones. He decided to organize his tasks better, delegate some responsibilities to his team, and come home earlier twice a week. Slowly, their evenings became happier. They cooked simple meals together, talked about their day, and played with their child. This small change improved not only his family life, but also his mood at work. His energy returned, and his creativity increased. This story teaches us that balance is not found by working more hours. It is created by setting limits and making time for what truly matters. Let us now explore how this applies to you. Do you sometimes feel overwhelmed by the number of things you need to do? Maybe you have studies, a job, a spouse, or house responsibilities. Perhaps you are also learning English, which requires time and focus. It can feel like too much at once. One helpful approach is to set clear priorities for each week. Ask yourself, what is the most important thing I want to achieve this week? It may be completing an important project at work, spending quality time with your husband or wife, or dedicating 2 hours to focused English practice. Once you know your top priorities, write them down and protect time for them. This simple habit can reduce stress and help you make real progress. Another example is from a woman named Sarah who runs a small online store from home. She has 2 children and a husband who works full-time. Sarah used to wake up late and start her day without a plan. By the afternoon, she felt tired and had not finished her tasks. She then decided to wake up 1 hour earlier, prepare a to-do list, and set 3 main tasks for each day. She also learned to say no to unnecessary social visits or long phone calls during working hours. This gave her more control of her schedule. She also started to practice English while doing simple activities, like listening to a podcast while cooking or repeating new words while folding laundry. Over a few months, her business improved, her English vocabulary grew, and she still had time in the evening to sit with her family and share a meal. Her story shows that time is often available if you use it wisely. It is also important to consider your health in this process. Many people focus only on work or learning but forget their physical and mental well-being. Let us take an example of David, who is a software developer. He spends long hours on the computer, but recently he started to feel back pain and constant tiredness. His wife suggested that they go for a walk together after dinner each evening. At first, David thought it was not necessary. But after a week of regular walking, he felt more energetic and slept better. Walking also gave them a chance to talk without distractions, strengthening their relationship. This simple 20-minute walk became a small but powerful habit that benefited both his health and his marriage. So as you think about improving your English or your professional life, remember to take care of your body and mind as well. Let me share another story about communication in relationships, because this is connected to how we use language in daily life. A couple, Daniel and Sophia, had been married for 5 years. They often argued about small things because they did not clearly communicate their expectations. For example, Sophia wanted Daniel to help more with house chores, but she never said it directly. She hoped he would notice. Daniel, on the other hand, thought he was doing enough, but he never asked her if she felt supported. One day, they decided to sit down and talk honestly. Sophia said, "Daniel, I feel tired doing all the cleaning alone. Can we share the tasks?" Daniel replied, "I didn't realize you felt this way. Let us make a list and divide the work." From that week, they created a simple routine. Daniel cleaned the kitchen after dinner, and Sophia took care of the laundry. This open conversation reduced their stress and gave them more time to enjoy each other's company. The lesson here is, communication is a key skill, both in relationships and in learning a language. If you do not express your needs clearly, misunderstandings can grow. As you listen to these stories, I encourage you to think of your own life. Is there a part of your week that feels too busy or unbalanced? Could you talk with your spouse, your family, or your team at work to find a better rhythm? Could you create a new habit like studying English for 15 minutes after breakfast or taking a walk in the evening? These small actions, when repeated every day, build a stronger foundation for both your personal and language growth. Now, let us connect this to real conversations in English. Imagine you meet a colleague at work, and they ask, "How do you manage your time? You always seem organized." You could reply, "I try to plan my week in advance and focus on the most important tasks. I also make sure to spend time with my family every evening." Or if you are talking to a friend who asks, "How do you keep your English improving?" While working full-time? You might say, "I listen to English podcasts while doing daily tasks, and I write down new words in a notebook." These are practical, natural sentences you can use. Sometimes cultural differences can affect how we see balance. In some cultures, working long hours is seen as a sign of dedication, while in others, spending time with family is considered more valuable. For example, in Japan, it is common for people to work very late, but recently many companies are encouraging shorter working hours to improve health and productivity. In some European countries, it is normal for families to eat dinner together at a fixed time, and businesses respect that. Learning about these differences helps you understand global communication better, and can also inspire you to create your own rules that suit your life. A useful phrase when you want to set boundaries politely is, "I appreciate your invitation, but I already have plans with my family tonight." This sentence is kind, clear, and respectful. Another helpful expression is, "Let us reschedule our meeting for tomorrow morning so I can finish my tasks today." These phrases show respect for others' time and your own priorities. Finally, I want to share a short reflection from my own routine. Every morning, I write down 3 small goals for the day. One for my work, one for my personal growth, and one for my relationships. It might be something like, finish writing a script, learn 5 new English expressions, and call a family member to ask about their day. This small habit keeps me focused and helps me feel fulfilled at the end of the day. It is not always perfect, and sometimes unexpected things happen, but having a simple plan gives direction. You can also try this. Take a small notebook and write your 3 main goals for today. Include at least one activity that helps your English, one that improves your connection with your loved ones, and one that helps your career or studies. Then, try to complete them step by step. Over time, these little steps become a big change. On Monday morning, I visited the local cafe near my apartment to grab some coffee and a quick breakfast. The cafe was moderately busy with people reading newspapers, typing on laptops, or chatting quietly with friends. As I waited for my order, I noticed a man struggling to find a free seat. I approached him and said, "Would you like to share this table? There is space here." He smiled and replied, "Thank you, that would be great." His name was Samuel, and he explained that he had just moved to the city with his wife and was trying to find a quiet place to work on some documents. We started a conversation about small local cafes, their atmosphere, and why people prefer certain spots to work or relax. Samuel shared that his wife loved exploring new bakeries during weekends, and they often made small trips just to enjoy fresh pastries. We talked about our favorite drinks and how a calm environment helps people focus. After finishing our drinks, Samuel and I exchanged a few tips about local markets where fresh produce is available early in the morning. He said, "I have noticed that markets open earlier here than in our previous city. It's quite convenient if you want fresh vegetables before work." I agreed, adding that this also provides an opportunity to interact with local sellers and practice English naturally. Even a few minutes of conversation with a stranger can help you become more comfortable speaking, especially when you focus on small, practical topics. Samuel mentioned that his wife encouraged him to speak to people whenever possible because it improves confidence. I suggested that he start by asking questions like, "Do you recommend this item?" or "How often do you get fresh bread?" These simple sentences can lead to longer conversations and help learners feel less. Later that day, I walked to the nearby community library, which often hosts workshops and discussion groups. As I entered, I noticed a young couple setting up chairs for an event. I approached them and said, "Do you need any help arranging these chairs?" The woman, named Olivia, smiled and said, "Yes, that would be wonderful. Thank you." While arranging chairs together, we began discussing the upcoming workshop on sustainable living. Olivia explained that she and her husband were passionate about teaching children how to take care of the environment, starting with simple habits like recycling and planting small gardens at home. This led to a broader conversation about how small, everyday actions can make a big difference, whether in community life or personal growth. During the workshop, participants were asked to share their experiences with sustainable practices. One man, Peter, shared that he and his wife had recently installed a small rainwater collection system to water their garden. He said, "It was easier than I thought, and it saves a lot of water." Another participant, Lisa, mentioned that she and her husband had started composting kitchen waste, and it had improved the soil in their backyard. Listening to these stories allowed me to practice understanding different accents, sentence structures, and vocabulary related to daily life and household activities. The discussion also emphasized the importance of patience and consistency when learning new skills, whether it is gardening, cooking, or improving English fluency. After the workshop, Olivia invited me to see her small community garden near the library. She and her husband had planted tomatoes, herbs, and flowers. While walking through the garden, Olivia explained, We also involve our neighbors and local children in planting. It helps everyone feel responsible for taking care of the plants. Her husband James added, "We also talk to visitors about the plants. It's a small way to practice English because we describe how each plant grows and what it needs." I realized that combining learning with real-life activities makes practicing English more natural. When you talk about something practical and familiar, the language becomes easier to remember. The following morning, I went to a local supermarket to pick up groceries. As I was selecting vegetables, I noticed a couple, Thomas and Rachel, struggling to reach some items on a higher shelf. I offered to help, saying, "Would you like me to grab that for you?" They thanked me, and we started talking about shopping routines. Thomas mentioned that he and Rachel plan their meals together for the week, which makes grocery shopping faster and more efficient. Rachel said, "It also helps us avoid buying unnecessary items and reduces waste." This conversation reminded me how simple sentences like, "Can I help you?" or "Do you need assistance?" are very effective in everyday interactions and can make people feel appreciated. Later in the week, I visited a small local clinic to schedule a health checkup. In the waiting area, I met a man named Daniel who was reading a magazine. We started talking about the benefits of regular checkups. Daniel shared that he and his wife had recently started walking for 30 minutes every morning, which improved their overall health. He said, "We also try to eat healthier meals together. It's easier to maintain habits when both of us participate." While chatting, I noticed how easy it was to use English in real conversations by discussing common topics like health, routines, and family life. Even a brief conversation in a waiting room can be valuable practice for speaking naturally and confidently. On Thursday afternoon, I attended a small cooking workshop at the community center. A chef named Emily was teaching simple, nutritious recipes. She explained, "Cooking together with your spouse or family helps everyone learn skills and spend quality time." During the workshop, participants worked in pairs or small groups. I partnered with a woman named Laura. She shared that she and her husband enjoyed cooking as a way to bond after busy workdays. We discussed ingredient choices, cooking techniques, and meal preparation. Emily encouraged us to ask questions and explain steps in English. This was an excellent opportunity to practice descriptive language, instructions, and polite questions. For instance, phrases like, "Can you pass me the salt?" or "How long should I cook this?" are common in daily life and very useful for conversation. That evening, I went for a short walk near the river. I saw a man named Jack and his wife arranging benches along the riverside. I asked, "Do you need a hand with that?" They welcomed the help, and while lifting some lightweight furniture, we talked about the importance of public spaces. Jack explained that he and his wife enjoyed organizing small community projects to make the area more welcoming. He said, "It's amazing how people appreciate small gestures. Even setting up a few benches makes a difference." This showed me how volunteering and helping others can provide opportunities to speak English naturally while building social connections. The next morning, I visited a bookstore to find a book on personal development. A young man named Ethan was browsing the same section. I asked, "Have you read any books by this author?" He replied, "Yes, I find them very motivating. I also enjoy discussing the ideas with friends." We started talking about our favorite sections, how we applied the tips in daily life, and which ideas were most practical. Ethan mentioned that he and his wife sometimes try the techniques together, like planning goals for the week or organizing tasks. This conversation showed me that learning English is not only about grammar or vocabulary. It is also about exchanging ideas, sharing experiences, and practicing expressions in meaningful contexts. Later that week, I took a short train trip to visit a friend in a nearby town. While waiting at the station, I noticed a couple, Henry and Olivia, looking for the ticket counter. I asked, "Do you need help finding the counter?" They said yes, and I guided them there. On the train, we started talking about travel routines and small tips for making trips easier. Henry explained how he and his wife pack meals for the journey to avoid spending too much time searching for restaurants. Olivia mentioned that they enjoy learning a few local phrases in English to communicate with staff at different stations. This exchange reinforced the idea that practical conversations help you remember vocabulary more easily because you use it in real-life contexts. That afternoon, I joined a small neighborhood cleanup event near a park. A man named Robert and his wife, Linda, were collecting trash along a walking path. I asked, "Can I help with these bags?" They welcomed my assistance. While picking up litter, Robert shared that he and Linda tried to involve their children in community work, teaching responsibility and teamwork. Linda added, "It's also a way to practice English with our kids because we describe what we are doing and ask questions." This story reminded me that learning English can happen in everyday actions, not just in classrooms or textbooks. On Saturday morning, I visited a local bakery again to pick up fresh bread. I noticed a woman named Hannah selecting pastries. I said, "Would you like me to help you carry these?" She thanked me and mentioned that she and her husband enjoyed trying new recipes at home, using ingredients from the bakery. We talked about baking tips, favorite flavors, and how sharing food can strengthen family bonds. This conversation highlighted that small gestures combined with friendly dialogue create the perfect environment for natural English practice. Later that afternoon, I attended a workshop at the community center about basic home maintenance. The instructor, Mr. Brown, demonstrated simple repairs like fixing a leaky faucet or adjusting door hinges. He encouraged participants to ask questions and explain steps in English. During a practical session, I worked with a woman named Clara. She and her husband often perform small repairs at home together, and this session gave them new ideas. We practiced phrases such as, "Can you hold this for me?" and "Which tool should I use next?" These everyday sentences are excellent for improving fluency because they are simple, useful, and repeatable. Sunday morning, I took a walk by the riverside and saw a couple teaching their children to ride bicycles. I said, "It looks like fun. Do they enjoy it?" The father replied, "Yes, it's their favorite weekend activity." The mother added, "It's a way for us to spend time together as a family while staying active." We talked about the importance of hobbies and outdoor activities for physical and mental health. This was another opportunity to practice natural English phrases and understand how people discuss routines and family life. In the evening, I visited my friend Daniel, who was organizing his home office with his wife. They were sorting files and documents, trying to improve efficiency. I said, "It looks like you have a lot to organize. Can I help?" Daniel smiled and said, "Yes, that would be great." While sorting papers, we discussed tips for staying organized and prioritizing tasks. His wife, Sophia, added that small steps every day make it easier to manage work without stress. This conversation highlighted that On Monday morning, I decided to visit the local library to return a few books and borrow something new to read. The library was peaceful, with sunlight streaming through large windows and the quiet rustle of pages turning. As I walked past the shelves, I noticed a man struggling to reach a book on a higher shelf. I asked, "Would you like me to help you get it?" He smiled and said, "Yes, please. Thank you." His name was Jonathan, and he explained that he had recently moved to the city with his wife and was exploring local libraries. While handing him the book, we began a conversation about favorite authors and genres. He mentioned that he and his wife enjoyed mystery novels and often read together in the evenings. I suggested a few titles I had recently read, and he seemed excited to try them. This small interaction reminded me that sharing simple tips or opinions in English can spark friendly conversations and help you practice naturally. After returning my books, I stopped by a nearby cafe for a quick snack. The cafe had a warm atmosphere, and the barista, named Olivia, greeted me politely. I asked, "Could you recommend a good pastry with coffee?" She suggested a croissant filled with almond paste. While she prepared my order, we talked about the best combinations of coffee and pastries. Olivia mentioned that she and her husband often experiment with new recipes at home, and sometimes bring them to the cafe for friends to try. I found this conversation interesting because it provided practical vocabulary for talking about food, taste, and preferences, which are common topics in everyday English. Later that morning, I visited a local market to buy fresh vegetables and fruits. While selecting some apples, I noticed a man named Patrick arranging tomatoes in neat rows. I asked, "Are these tomatoes fresh today?" He replied, "Yes, they arrived this morning. My wife helps me with deliveries, and we always make sure the produce is fresh." We started talking about the different types of fruits and vegetables available in the market, their uses, and how to select the best ones. Patrick mentioned that his wife sometimes prepares small tasting samples for customers, which encourages them to try new items. This small exchange reminded me how practical conversations in English often revolve around daily needs and shared interests. In the afternoon, I went to a community workshop focused on home gardening. The instructor, Mr. Thomas, explained basics, techniques for planting and maintaining flowers. He encouraged participants to ask questions and share their experiences. A couple, Michael and Laura, shared how they started a small garden in their backyard and involved their children in planting. Michael said, "It's rewarding to see the plants grow, and it also teaches our children responsibility." Laura added that they sometimes exchange seeds and plants with neighbors. During the workshop, I practiced phrases like, "How often?" "Should I water these plants?" and "Which fertilizer works best for small flowers?" These practical phrases are very useful for real-life conversations and help learners speak confidently. On Tuesday morning, I visited a local post office to send a package. While standing in line, I noticed a young couple, Daniel and Sophia, looking unsure about filling out the form. I asked, "Do you need help completing this form?" They thanked me and explained it was their first time sending a package internationally. While filling out the form, we talked about common challenges and simple phrases used in postal services. Daniel mentioned that he and Sophia often write letters to family members in another city, which helps them practice English. Sophia said, "We try to use polite expressions and full sentences to improve our writing skills." This small interaction showed me that everyday tasks provide excellent opportunities to use English in practical ways. Later that afternoon, I attended a small seminar about personal productivity. The speaker, Mrs. Lewis, shared tips on planning daily routines and setting realistic goals. She explained that she and her husband follow a structured schedule to balance work, home responsibilities, and personal growth. Participants shared their experiences. One woman named Rachel mentioned that she schedules time to read, cook, and exercise with her husband, ensuring a balanced day. Another man, Thomas, said he sets reminders to complete tasks efficiently and avoids multitasking to stay focused. Listening to these conversations helped me understand how native speakers describe routines and priorities in clear and natural English. That evening, I went to a local park to enjoy some fresh air and watch people engage in recreational activities. I noticed a man named Kevin teaching his young daughter to play football. I said, "She seems very focused. How long have you been training together?" Kevin replied, "We started a few months ago. It's a fun way to spend time together and also keep her active." We discussed simple tips for beginners and ways to encourage children in sports. His wife Lisa joined us and added that they rotate activities every weekend to make it more engaging. These conversations demonstrated how English is used in family and leisure contexts, and the vocabulary is practical for real-life situations. On Wednesday, I visited a small hardware store to buy tools for a home project. The store owner, Mr. Harris, greeted me and asked if I needed assistance. I explained what I was looking for, and he recommended a few options. While discussing the products, he mentioned that he and his wife have been running the store for over 20 years and enjoy sharing knowledge with customers. A young couple nearby, Andrew and Sophia, asked questions about garden tools, and I helped them understand the differences. We talked about durability, usability, and maintenance. This conversation was a perfect example of using English to exchange advice and information clearly and politely. Later in the week, I visited a community center where a workshop on creative writing was being held. The instructor, Mrs. Parker, asked participants to share short stories about meaningful experiences. I listened to a woman named Emily share a story about how she and her husband volunteered at a local shelter. She explained how helping others not only strengthened their relationship, but also improved her confidence in speaking English while communicating with visitors. Another participant, named Daniel, talked about starting a small reading group with his family. The discussions provided practical examples of storytelling vocabulary and everyday phrases used in expressing feelings, actions, and experiences. On Thursday morning, I attended a short lecture at a local museum about regional history. A couple, Jonathan and Rachel, were sitting nearby. Jonathan explained that he and his wife love visiting museums to learn more about local culture and traditions. We discussed favorite exhibits, historical events, and simple ways to explain stories in English. Phrases like, "I found this exhibit fascinating because," or "this painting reminds me of," are excellent for describing observations. These phrases are commonly used in daily conversations when discussing art, history, or experiences. That afternoon, I stopped by a local bakery to buy bread. A man named Jacob and his wife were selecting pastries. I offered to help carry some items to the counter, and we started a small conversation about baking. Jacob explained that he and his wife enjoy trying new recipes at home and often bring fresh bread to friends. This type of interaction is valuable for practicing polite offers, descriptive language, and expressing preferences in English. On Friday, I visited a community garden where volunteers were planting flowers and shrubs. A couple, Henry and Olivia, welcomed me to join them. We discussed the different plants, watering schedules, and techniques to protect flowers from pests. Henry mentioned that he and his wife try to involve their children in gardening to teach responsibility and teamwork. Olivia added that explaining gardening tasks in English helped their children improve language skills while learning practical skills. This experience demonstrated how natural conversations in English can happen while performing daily activities. Later, that day I went to a small electronics shop to inquire about a new appliance. The shop owner, Mr. Clark, explained the features and differences between models. While discussing, he mentioned that he and his wife run the shop together and often answer detailed questions for customers. A young man named Ethan and his wife asked questions about installation, and I assisted them by explaining simple steps. This interaction reinforced the importance of practical, clear English for giving instructions and answering questions politely. Saturday morning, I walked to a nearby park and noticed a father, Brian, teaching his son how to ride a bicycle. I said, "It looks like fun. How long has he been learning?" Brian replied, "We started last month. It's a great way to spend time together and stay active." His wife joined us and added that rotating activities like this keeps children motivated. This conversation provided a natural setting to practice English vocabulary related to sports, family activities, and encouragement. That afternoon, I attended a workshop on home organization. The instructor, Mrs. Allen, explained methods to sort documents, organize kitchen spaces, and maintain tidy living areas. A participant, Clara, mentioned that she and her husband follow these tips to save time and reduce stress at home. We discussed practical sentences such as, "Could you hand me that folder?" or "Where should I place this item?" These phrases are highly applicable in daily life and help improve conversational fluency. On Monday morning, I decided to visit the nearby community center to join a short workshop on practical cooking skills. The center was quiet, but a few people had already arrived to participate. As I entered, I noticed a couple, Daniel and Maria, arranging utensils on the tables. I approached and asked, "Do you need any help setting up?" They smiled and said, "Yes, that would be very helpful." While placing bowls and knives on the table, we started talking about meal preparation. Daniel mentioned that he and his wife often plan weekly meals together to save time and ensure they eat healthily. Maria added, "We also involve our children by asking them to help with small tasks like washing vegetables or mixing ingredients." This conversation reminded me that practical English often comes alive in real situations where people collaborate and share responsibilities. Later that morning, the instructor, Mrs. Johnson, explained how to make simple yet nutritious meals using seasonal ingredients. She encouraged participants to ask questions and interact in English while cooking. I partnered with a woman named Lucy. She explained that she and her husband like to try new recipes on weekends, experimenting with flavors from different countries. While chopping vegetables, we practiced useful phrases such as, "Could you pass me the knife?" and "How long should I simmer this sauce?" These phrases are extremely useful in everyday conversation as they are clear, polite, and repeatable. After the workshop, I went to a small bookshop nearby to pick up a novel I had been wanting to read. The shop owner, Mr. Clark, greeted me and asked if I needed any recommendations. I said, "Yes, I'm looking for something engaging and practical for daily life situations." He suggested a book that included dialogues and real-life scenarios. While browsing, I met a couple, Thomas and Emma, who were discussing the same book. They mentioned that they liked reading together in the evenings and sometimes discussed vocabulary and expressions to help improve their English. This interaction demonstrated that reading can be both enjoyable and educational, especially when it involves sharing insights with others. In the afternoon, I visited a local park where a small volunteer group was planting flowers and organizing the garden area. I saw a couple, Mark and Jennifer, picking up tools and soil bags. I asked, "Would you like some help with this?" They nodded and explained that they regularly volunteer to maintain the park because it benefits the neighborhood and provides a healthy space for families. While working together, we exchanged phrases like, "Could you hold this bag for a moment?" and "Where should I plant this seedling?" Practical English phrases like these are often repeated in everyday interactions and are excellent for improving fluency. Later that day, I attended a seminar at the community hall on time management and productivity. The speaker, Mr. Anderson, shared techniques for organizing daily routines, including work, family, and personal goals. He explained that he and his wife divide household responsibilities to maintain balance and reduce stress. During the Q&A session, participants shared their own experiences. One woman, Sarah, mentioned that she plans her meals, cleaning schedule, and English practice sessions with her husband. Another participant, Peter, explained that setting clear priorities each morning helps him complete tasks efficiently. Listening to these discussions offered real-life examples of expressions like, "We try to plan ahead, and it helps us stay organized." On Tuesday morning, I went to a nearby pharmacy to pick up some vitamins. While waiting, I noticed a man, Robert, looking unsure about which product to choose. I asked, "Would you like some advice?" He said yes, and we began a conversation about daily health routines. Robert mentioned that he and his wife regularly check labels, compare options, and discuss which products are suitable for their needs. Phrases like, "Which one is best for daily use?" and "How often should I take this?" are very useful in English because they are clear and commonly used in practical conversations. In the afternoon, I visited a local bakery to buy bread for the week. A couple, Nathan and Lucy, were ahead of me in line, choosing pastries. I offered to carry a tray for them to the counter, and they welcomed the help. We began talking about favorite flavors, types of bread, and simple cooking techniques at home. Nathan mentioned that he and his wife enjoy baking as a weekend hobby and sometimes share their creations with friends. This interaction demonstrated how simple English phrases like, "Would you like me to help?" or "Which flavor do you recommend?" can create friendly conversations and practice opportunities. Later that afternoon, I attended a small art class at a community center. The instructor, Mrs. Blake, was demonstrating basic painting techniques. A couple, Henry and Emma, were also participating. I introduced myself, and we started sharing our experiences with painting at home. Henry explained that he and his wife enjoy working on creative projects together, often making decorations for their home. Emma added that they discuss ideas, select colors, and plan each project step by step. We practiced phrases like, "Could you pass me the brush?" and "What color should I use next?" These phrases are practical, polite, and commonly used in English conversation. On Wednesday morning, I walked to the local market to buy fresh vegetables. I noticed a couple, Daniel and Olivia, selecting tomatoes and peppers. I asked, "Do you need help with these?" They said yes, and we began talking about meal planning and favorite recipes. Daniel explained that he and Olivia plan weekly menus and shop accordingly to save time and reduce waste. Olivia added that they try to cook dishes from different cultures to make meals interesting. These conversations allowed me to practice practical vocabulary, like, "Which one is fresher?" or "How many should we buy?" which are frequently used in daily English. In the afternoon, I attended a workshop on small home repairs. The instructor, Mr. Wilson, demonstrated how to fix leaky faucets and tighten loose hinges. I partnered with a woman named Clara. She explained that she and her husband perform minor repairs together to save money and maintain their home efficiently. We practiced English phrases like, "Could you hold this pipe?" and "Which tool should I use next?" These phrases are highly useful in practical situations at home, and repeating them helps learners become confident speakers. Later that day, I visited a local coffee shop. I noticed a couple, Ethan and Sarah, enjoying coffee while reviewing documents. I asked, "Do you need help finding a quiet table?" They thanked me, and we started a conversation about studying routines. Ethan mentioned that he and his wife dedicate time each evening to review notes and practice English together. Sarah added that they often discuss vocabulary, grammar, and phrases from real-life situations. This interaction highlighted the importance of integrating English practice into daily routines for continuous improvement. On Thursday morning, I went to a small gym to attend a yoga class. A couple, Michael and Laura, were stretching before the session. I said, "It looks like you both practice regularly. How long have you been doing yoga?" Michael replied, "We started last year, and it helps us stay healthy and relaxed." Laura added that they often practice at home together and occasionally attend classes for guidance. Talking about fitness routines provided practical vocabulary for expressing habits, describing actions, and asking questions politely in English. Later in the afternoon, I joined a community gardening session. A couple, Jacob and Olivia, were planting herbs in small pots. I asked if I could assist them. They welcomed my help and shared tips about plant care. Jacob explained that he and his wife enjoy growing herbs at home because it allows them to cook fresh meals while learning new words in English. Olivia added that they often label plants in English to practice reading and pronunciation. Participating in practical activities like gardening provides natural opportunities for listening and speaking in English. On Friday morning, I visited a local bakery to pick up some pastries. A couple, Daniel and Emily, were choosing items. I offered to help carry their tray, and we started a conversation about their favorite desserts. Emily mentioned that she and her husband enjoy experimenting with new recipes at home and occasionally share them with neighbors. Daniel added that discussing recipes helps them practice English vocabulary naturally. This small exchange reinforced the importance of using polite expressions, descriptive language, and practical phrases in daily conversations. Later that day, I attended a small seminar on personal productivity. The instructor, Mr. Harris, discussed methods for organizing time, setting priorities, and reducing stress. Participants shared experiences about balancing work, home responsibilities, and personal growth. One woman, Sarah, explained that she and her husband plan meals, chores, and English study sessions together. Another man, Peter, mentioned that setting clear goals each morning helps him complete tasks efficiently. Listening to these stories provided examples of natural English. I started the day by visiting a local farmer's market where fresh vegetables, fruits, and flowers were beautifully displayed. As I walked through the stalls, I noticed a man named Richard arranging baskets of apples. I asked, "Are these fresh from today's delivery?" He replied, "Yes, they arrived this morning. My wife helps me sort them every day." We began discussing how to select the ripest fruit and ways to store them at home. Richard mentioned that he and his wife enjoy cooking together using fresh produce from the market, and they often try new recipes over the weekends. Practicing English while talking about daily tasks like shopping helps learners use vocabulary that is immediately useful. After browsing for vegetables, I stopped by a small cafe nearby. The barista, named Sophie, greeted me politely and asked what I would like. I said, "Could you suggest something light for breakfast?" She recommended a freshly baked scone with honey. While she prepared my order, we started a conversation about breakfast habits. Sophie explained that she and her husband like to experiment with different pastries at home before introducing them at work. We discussed common breakfast items, flavors, and ways to describe taste in English. This interaction highlighted phrases like, "Which one do you recommend?" and "I usually prefer something sweet in the morning," which are practical and easy to use in conversation. Later, I walked to a nearby bookstore to explore new releases. I met a couple, Daniel and Emma, discussing a book on time management. Daniel explained that he and his wife enjoy reading together and sharing insights over dinner. Emma added that discussing new ideas improves not only their English, but also their understanding of different approaches to productivity. While browsing, I asked them, "Do you follow the strategies suggested in this book?" They smiled and explained how they adapted certain tips to fit their routine. Conversations like these provide a great way to practice English while engaging with topics that interest you. In the afternoon, I joined a community gardening session at the local park. A couple, Mark and Jennifer, were planting flowers in raised beds. I asked, "Could I help with the watering?" They welcomed my help, and we began exchanging tips about plant care. Mark mentioned that he and his wife enjoy involving their children in gardening, teaching them about responsibility and teamwork. Jennifer added that labeling plants in English helps them practice vocabulary. Activities like this provide natural opportunities to learn and use English in context while engaging in enjoyable tasks. Later, I visited a small electronics shop to look for a new blender. The store owner, Mr. Harris, greeted me and explained the differences between several models. While I was considering the options, a young couple, Ethan and Sophia, asked questions about kitchen appliances. I helped them understand the differences and demonstrated simple instructions in English. Ethan mentioned that he and his wife research appliances together to make informed decisions. Discussing features, comparisons, and instructions in English allows learners to practice both listening and speaking in practical contexts. In the late morning, I walked to a community center for a short workshop on creative writing. The instructor, Mrs. Parker, asked participants to share stories about meaningful personal experiences. I listened to a woman named Clara share how she and her husband volunteered at a local shelter. She explained that helping others not only strengthened their bond, but also improved her confidence in speaking English. Another participant, Peter, discussed starting a small reading group at home with his wife. We practiced expressions like, "We decided to try," or "It was inspiring to see," which are useful for storytelling in English. During lunch, I visited a small cafe near the park. A couple, Thomas and Olivia, were sitting at a corner table discussing plans for the weekend. I asked if I could join the conversation for a moment. They shared that they enjoy visiting different parts of the city, trying local cuisine, and attending workshops together. Olivia mentioned that she sometimes writes brief notes in English about their experiences to improve her vocabulary. Talking about leisure activities helps learners practice phrases such as, "We are planning to visit," and "I would like to try," which are common in daily conversation. In the afternoon, I attended a workshop on home repairs at the Community Center. The instructor, Mr. Wilson, demonstrated how to fix minor plumbing issues. I partnered with a woman named Emily. She explained that she and her husband often do small repairs at home to save money and improve their skills. We practiced phrases like, "Which tool should I use next?" and "Could you hold this for a moment?" These practical phrases are helpful in everyday situations and are simple to remember and apply. Later that day, I visited a local library to borrow some books. A couple, Jonathan and Rachel, were discussing the schedule for upcoming reading events. Jonathan explained that he and his wife attend these events to practice English while sharing their opinions about different topics. Rachel added that summarizing the stories and asking questions aloud helps improve comprehension. Engaging in library discussions provides excellent listening practice and reinforces the use of complete sentences in English. In the early evening, I went for a walk in a neighborhood park. I noticed a father, Kevin, teaching his son how to play basketball. I said, "It looks like he is improving quickly. How long have you been practicing?" Kevin explained that they practice together several times a week to improve skills and enjoy quality family time. His wife added that rotating activities and setting small goals keeps their child motivated. Conversations about sports, family activities, and encouragement provide learners with practical vocabulary for daily life situations. During dinner, I visited a small restaurant to try a new dish. I met a couple, Nathan and Lucy, who were celebrating a small personal achievement. I complimented their choice of dishes, and we began discussing cooking techniques, flavors, and weekend routines. Nathan mentioned that he and his wife enjoy experimenting with new recipes at home and occasionally invite friends to try them. These types of interactions help learners practice polite expressions, descriptive language, and everyday conversation skills. The next day, I attended a small seminar on personal productivity. The speaker, Mr. Anderson, discussed organizing tasks, balancing work and home responsibilities, and setting achievable goals. Participants shared their experiences. Sarah explained that she and her husband schedule English study sessions along with household chores to maintain a balanced routine. Peter mentioned that setting priorities every morning helps him complete tasks efficiently. Listening to such examples reinforces natural English expressions used to describe routines and habits. Later, I visited a bakery to pick up fresh bread for the week. A couple, Daniel and Emily, were selecting pastries. I offered to carry a tray to the counter, and we began a conversation about favorite flavors and baking tips. Emily explained that she and her husband enjoy experimenting with recipes and sharing them with friends. This interaction provided an opportunity to practice polite phrases, descriptive language, and everyday English vocabulary and context. In the afternoon, I joined a yoga class at a nearby gym. A couple, Michael and Laura, were stretching before the session. I asked, "Do you practice yoga regularly?" Michael replied, "Yes. It helps us stay fit and relax together." Laura added that practicing at home occasionally helps them maintain consistency. Discussing fitness routines gives learners vocabulary for activities, habits, and polite questions about routines. Later that evening, I participated in a community volunteering project at a neighborhood park. A couple, Jacob and Olivia, were planting small trees and flowers. I asked, "Can I help with the planting?" They welcomed me, sharing tips about plant care. Jacob mentioned that he and his wife involve their children to teach responsibility while practicing English vocabulary. Olivia added that labeling plants in English is a fun way to remember terms. These practical interactions provide natural listening and speaking practice. During a weekend trip to a local art studio, I attended a painting class. The instructor, Mrs. Blake, demonstrated basic techniques, and a couple, Henry and Emma, were also participating. We discussed home art projects, creative planning, and sharing tasks. Phrases like, "Could you pass me the palette?" or "Which color do you suggest next?" are practical and useful for everyday English. Later that day, I visited a small electronics store. The owner, Mr. Clark, explained appliance features to customers. A young couple, Ethan and Sarah, had questions about installation. I assisted them by explaining simple steps. Ethan mentioned that he and his wife research products together for better decision-making, discussing instructions, comparisons, and daily routines in English reinforces listening and speaking skills. In the evening, I went for a walk along the river. I noticed a father, Brian, teaching his daughter to row a small boat. I asked, "It looks challenging. How long has she been learning?" Brian explained that they practice regularly to improve skills and spend quality time together. His wife added that alternating activities keeps their child engaged. Discussing family activities and sports provides vocabulary. I decided to start the morning by visiting a small local cafe to enjoy a cup of tea and observe the morning routine. As I entered, I noticed a man named Samuel arranging tables and chairs with his wife. I asked, "Do you need any help with this?" He smiled and replied, "That would be great, thank you." While helping them, we started talking about the cafe's daily operations. Samuel explained that he and his wife wake up early to prepare fresh pastries and coffee for customers. He mentioned that they enjoy experimenting with new flavors together and occasionally introduce seasonal items. Discussing everyday tasks like running a cafe provides practical English vocabulary, such as, "Could you move this chair?" and "Which table should I set next?" After finishing my tea, I walked to a nearby farmer's market to buy fresh vegetables. A couple, Daniel and Margaret, were selecting tomatoes and peppers. I asked, "Are these fresh from today's delivery?" They replied that they had just arrived and that they often check quality together before buying. We discussed different ways to store vegetables and maintain freshness. Daniel mentioned that he and Margaret enjoy cooking meals together, trying recipes from different cultures. This conversation introduced me to phrases like, "Which one is the ripest?" and "How many should we get?" which are useful in everyday shopping conversations. Later in the morning, I visited a small library to browse new books. A man named Andrew was sorting returned books with his wife. I asked, "Are you organizing these for the shelves?" He explained that they volunteer to keep the library neat, and that working together allows them to practice English as well. We talked about favorite authors and genres. Andrew mentioned that he and his wife often read the same book and discuss it to improve comprehension. Useful phrases like, "Have you read this author before?" and "Which book did you enjoy the most?" are great for everyday English practice. After leaving the library, I attended a community gardening event at a nearby park. A couple, Kevin and Laura, were planting flowers in small beds. I asked if I could help water the plants, and they welcomed me. Kevin explained that they involve their children in gardening to teach responsibility, while Laura added that labeling plants in English helps reinforce vocabulary. While working together, I practiced phrases like, "Could you hold this plant for a moment?" and "Where should I place this seedling?" Gardening provides a natural way to learn English while performing enjoyable practical tasks. In the afternoon, I visited a small electronics store to look at kitchen appliances. The store owner, Mr. Harris, was arranging new items on the shelves. I asked for advice on choosing a blender, and he explained the differences between models. A young couple, Ethan and Sophia, asked me questions about using a mixer. I assisted them, practicing phrases like, "This one is more durable," and "It is easy to clean after use." Ethan mentioned that he and his wife research new appliances together before buying, which often leads to detailed English discussions at home. Later, I attended a cooking workshop at the community center. The instructor, Mrs. Johnson, demonstrated making a simple pasta dish. I partnered with a woman named Lucy, who explained that she and her husband enjoy experimenting with recipes at home on weekends. We practiced useful phrases like, "Could you pass me the pasta?" and "How long should this simmer?" These phrases are practical, polite, and applicable in everyday cooking conversations. After the workshop, I stopped by a local supermarket to buy groceries. A couple, Thomas and Emma, were selecting items in the produce section. I asked, "Do you need help choosing the best ones?" They smiled and said yes. We discussed meal planning and selecting fresh ingredients. Thomas explained that he and Emma create a weekly menu to save time and avoid waste, and Emma added that they try to include new recipes from other countries. Conversing about shopping routines and meal preparation provides valuable vocabulary for daily English usage. Later in the afternoon, I joined a creative writing session at a community library. The instructor, Mrs. Parker, asked participants to share stories about meaningful experiences. A woman named Clara talked about volunteering at a local shelter with her husband. She explained that speaking with visitors and organizing activities helped her improve English naturally. Another participant, Peter, described starting a reading group with his spouse. We practiced expressions like, "It was inspiring to see," and "We decided to try," which are useful for sharing personal experiences and telling stories in English. During the evening, I visited a small cafe to relax and have dinner. A couple, Nathan and Lucy, were enjoying tea and snacks. I complimented their selection, and we began a conversation about favorite dishes and home cooking routines. Nathan mentioned that he and his wife experiment with new recipes every weekend and share them with friends. This type of interaction is perfect for practicing polite conversation, descriptive language, and expressing personal preferences. On the next morning, I went to a community seminar about time management. The speaker, Mr. Anderson, explained techniques for organizing daily routines, prioritizing tasks, and balancing work and home life. Participants shared experiences. Sarah mentioned that she and her husband schedule English study sessions, chores, and meal preparation together to maintain a balanced lifestyle. Peter explained that planning each morning helps him complete tasks efficiently. Listening to these real-life examples reinforces the use of natural English expressions to discuss routines and priorities. Later, I walked to a bakery to pick up fresh bread. A couple, Daniel and Emily, was selecting pastries. I offered to carry a tray to the counter, and we started talking about their favorite flavors. Emily mentioned that she and her husband enjoy trying new recipes and sharing them with friends. Practicing polite phrases, descriptive language, and everyday vocabulary in real-life situations is very effective for learners. In the afternoon, I attended a yoga class at a nearby gym. A couple, Michael and Laura, were stretching before the session. I asked, "Do you practice regularly?" Michael replied, "Yes, it helps us stay fit and spend time together." Laura added that practicing at home occasionally helps maintain consistency. Discussing sports and fitness routines provides vocabulary for activities, habits, and polite questions about routines. Later that day, I joined a community volunteering project at the local park. A couple, Jacob and Olivia, were planting trees and herbs. I asked, "Can I help with this?" They welcomed my assistance and shared tips for plant care. Jacob mentioned that he and his wife involved their children to teach responsibility while practicing English vocabulary. Olivia added that labeling plants in English helps retain new words. Engaging in practical activities is a natural way to improve listening and speaking skills. On a weekend visit to a nearby art studio, I attended a painting class. The instructor, Mrs. Blake, demonstrated basic techniques. A couple, Henry and Emma, was also participating. We discussed home projects and shared creative ideas. Phrases like, "Could you pass me the brush?" or "Which color do you suggest next?" are practical for everyday English conversations while participating in interactive activities. Later, I went to a small electronics shop. The owner, Mr. Clark, explained appliance features to customers. A young couple, Ethan and Sarah, had questions about installation. I helped them by demonstrating simple steps. Ethan mentioned that he and his wife often research products together before buying, which encourages detailed English discussions at home. Discussing instructions, comparisons, and daily routines in English reinforces listening and speaking. Practice. During the evening, I walked along the riverside. I noticed a father, Brian, teaching his daughter how to row a small boat. I asked, "It looks challenging. How long has she been learning?" Brian explained that practicing regularly improves skills and strengthens family bonds. His wife added that alternating activities keeps their child engaged. Discussing family activities and sports provides vocabulary for encouragement, routines, and polite questions. Later that week, I attended a small seminar on home safety. The instructor, Mrs. Allen, demonstrated basic precautions like installing smoke detectors and securing windows. A participant, Clara, shared that she and her husband regularly check their home safety equipment and discuss household responsibilities together. We practiced phrases like, "Could you show me how this works?"